So my name is Parker Dingledine, and in this video, I wanted to finish up my series about my teaching experience. And in two previous videos, I talked about why I wanted to teach, what I enjoyed. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why I left teaching. And I'm going to show you some resources or some other people's writings and statistics on that. So just to begin, first of all, I liked teaching. I didn't resign on my own accord. And I preliminarily, I guess, in this video, I just would like to speak on the zeal that I had and I wanted to continue with. I turned in my letter of return intent to the Starkville School District office, and I was thoroughly enjoying what I was doing, and I thought that I was improving. I had feedback from one of the lead teachers, and she said that I had made improvements. So I was happy. You could ask my friends. I was excited to be in the classroom. I was able to have the ability to teach more clearly because I wasn't having as many disruptions in the class. I was able to start planning the way that I wanted to, and doing things differently because I had more confidence. So you could probably, I guess, ask my friends and they would tell you, like, I was excited and I was glad to be teaching. And then whenever the principal got my intent to return, then everything changed. It was, and I don't know, it doesn't really matter whether it is routine or not. I had my routine. He said, this is just a routine evaluation. You are just getting evaluated so that we can say that you should be able to come back. And, I understand that. I get it. But it's just specifically for new teachers. So the evaluation process was about things that they saw currently that I needed to improve. And so it didn't have anything to do with what I had already done. It wasn't about the progress I had already made. It was about things that they thought that I should be doing that I wasn't able to do yet. And this is a problem for me because it completely disregards all of the progress, all of the gains that I had made. And it disregards all the time that I'd spent previously making improvements. And it disregarded the fact that they could have evaluated me in September and seen how horribly I was doing, and then evaluated me in January to see what I was doing and how I was doing things different already. You could have given me credit for that. But then you give me right after January, you say, okay, during February, we're going to start evaluating you. Well, apparently, and I didn't know this, but teacher morale is the very lowest in February, right before spring break. And you have the most amount of work that you could do right then. And that's when I had all of the pressure to try and dot my I's and cross my T's. So this plays into my first point, really, is that there's a lack of useful feedback for teachers when it comes to actually applying the feedback into the classroom. And instead of being able to show the teacher exactly what they're doing, it's in what to replace it with. It is, we're going to tell you what you're doing wrong, give you some more work in reading more things to fix it, and try and apply it yourself. And it's hypocrisy because I was told that whenever you want the students to do something, to learn a new concept, to apply a new skill, you need to show them, you need to model for them. And I never once had an expert teacher come into my classroom with my kids and show me how I should teach a lesson, how to change what I was doing to do things differently. And that just goes to show that there is a lack of that in the classroom setting. And I didn't even know that it was possible for a principal to come in and help the teacher teach or learn how to teach. I just thought you had to go watch other people and kind of try and make connections yourself without any formal instruction of how to do that. I guess secondly, underneath that point, it's difficult to understand coming from a biomedical engineering background, someone who's very specifically technically qualified to have higher levels of understanding for mathematics and science and engineering. I'm very technically qualified, but when it comes to actually planning a lesson, when it comes to planning units and thinking ahead of projects and things to implement, practical ways to get things done quickly, there was no modeling of that. I never saw someone make a lesson plan in my entire life. I had people tell me structures, show me things, give me structures to do, but not, here's my own lesson, here's what I'm going to do, here's the rationale behind that. It was always, what should I say, implicit, not explicit instruction on lesson planning. And I think the most valuable piece of advice was from my co-teacher. And she told me, oh yeah, whenever I make my first set of lesson plans, I don't do anything until I plan my calendar for the month. And I make a calendar for the month, and I have a set of things that I'm going to do routinely on a weekly basis. And that's how I plan. And I was like, wow, that's so simple, but it's not something that I thought of. And it's just things like that. It's like, more of that would have been so helpful. Like planning instruction from a textbook, like just show me how to do that. If that's what you're asking for, if you really don't care about problem solving, you don't care about the students thinking, you just want them to shove more information that they're not going to use into their brains. That's another complaint that I have. But if you just want them to shove information into their brains, show me how to make a textbook lesson, how we're going to read the text and do all these things, and then design a unit based off of presenting information in the text. So I don't have to make students just sit through a PowerPoint lecture every single day, that it's already printed out. I don't have to make copies of anything. You have your journal or whatever, and you have the textbook, and you do this stuff. Never had anyone show me how to do that. And there's other methods of teaching that people probably use in planning that I just don't know. And I wish people would have told me about. And that plays into the next point that I have. There's administrative disregard for the importance of teacher preparation. And especially for new teachers don't have a clue about how to quickly get something done. And so they're going to take more time because they have to learn how to get those lessons planned, to get the content ready, to take something someone else has done and then make it their own. It just took me so much time in order to figure out just those basic ideas of getting someone else's materials, being able to find platforms to search in, or different avenues of finding materials. I wasn't given any help about, oh yeah, this textbook's available. Here's this. It was all like, you don't know that? Like, why don't you know that? Like, just simple things like that, I guess people just don't ask you or help you with because they just assume it's like, oh, well, like, you should have learned that in college. Like, no, I took master's courses and none of them told me practical aspects of, here's where you get the textbook. Here's resources. Resources or textbook. This online resource. This online resource. This online resource. And that's how you plan. And no one showed me that. And another point under this is the administrative disregard, taking away your planning period, asking you to do things during your planning period, and taking the planning period away for meetings with other faculty members, professional development, and meetings, especially for new teachers, evaluation meetings. And that's what, I guess, those three things happen so frequently. What I mentioned at the beginning of maybe this video or a prior video was that it was right after I submitted my intent to return, everything went south and I began having a nightmare. And it was at that point when I started getting evaluated that I lost all my planning time. I had to stay. I was already staying late. I had no instructional planning time during the day when your brain is most ready and active. I had to sit through meetings with the principals, with evaluators about how to improve, when all really the improvement that I needed to make was actually being able to make the content ready, get the content ready, get planning. I had parent meetings for students who were struggling, and they were struggling in multiple classes and they decided to get their act together or something. And so I said yes. And I think it was the 2 weeks before spring break, I had, of course, out of the 5 days for work, I had 4 out of the 5 days were taken with meetings. And the next week, the week of exams, the week before spring break, I still hadn't had my exam finalized. I still had to write it because the previous week I had to administer a test and get all this work done. On top of that, I have to do a million other things. I could talk about the other responsibilities that I had to do during the planning periods that I did have, like try and get a kid who has to take the test somewhere else because he can't take it in class. I had to get that test to this other teacher, and the administrators, because he won't mind, they just want him to graduate. He's smart enough to graduate, but he just won't behave. He just wants to get around the system and throw a temper tantrum. He's in 12th grade. It's just, anyways, and I can't disclose details because that's just a violation of rights and stuff. But anyway, so there's just a lack of respect for the teacher's amount of time that they need to plan stuff. And it's just, if that's a chronic problem, which it is, when are you going to be able to teach? And I was asked in my evaluation before spring break, another one that was taking away from my time. It took the entire hour and a half to do this evaluation meeting. And they said, oh, Mr. Dingledine, you haven't finished your exam. You haven't written your exam. When were you planning on doing that? I was like, you do realize right now I could be writing the exam. Or yesterday when I was doing something for you that I asked you to do, you asked me to do, I could have been writing the exam then. I have to grade stuff because we're going over evaluations, and I had to put the grades in. Like, when do you want me to do this? When should I write the exam? Oh, you should have written it earlier in the semester. You should have had this written weeks ago. Oh, when I was staying late at 6:30 p.m. Nearly every day, coming in on the weekends to do work on Saturday and Sunday to get prepared for Monday. So I was spending nearly 60 hours a week just to prepare and get ready, and only to have people complain about the fact that I hadn't written the exam, and I was supposed to write a study guide. There's nowhere in my contract that says you must write a study guide for your exam. It's ridiculous. So this leads into my last point, and this has several sub-points, but the district-wide apathy, and maybe even discipline-wide apathy towards a couple of teaching philosophies. And I think these teaching philosophies are very important to what I've seen through my master's program as important for teaching, and stuff that I really don't see how I could teach without doing these things. So philosophy number 1, number 2, 3, and 4. So number 1 is teaching through problem solving. Number 2 is inspiration through, well, for students through field trips. Teacher to student respect. This is philosophy 3. Teacher to student respect by giving them responsibility. And that's within this specific district with the slogan, respectful, ready, and responsible. And lots of school districts have these little catchphrases and stuff they expect. Philosophy 4, the undermining of the teacher's authority and autonomy for teaching and for discipline in the classroom. So these 4 things, I guess I'd talk a little bit about each. Philosophy number 1, teaching through problem solving. And this ties into the exam, having the exam and having students take the final exam. It's very common knowledge in teaching that teaching to the test and simply lecturing students on what they need to know are less, I guess I have to be careful, they're less effective at students remembering the material. They're less effective methods of instruction, or I guess learning for students, than something like problem solving, something where they have to look at a problem, they have to read about how to solve a problem, or gather information about how to solve a problem. And in teaching through using that problem solving method, that is a more effective means of teaching. But it's not valued, and it definitely wasn't valued in the school district that I was working in. And this idea of teaching through problem solving is so seldomly used in school districts around the country, simply because of the No Child Left Behind Act, having to teach to the standards. Supposedly, these standards are supposed to be more advanced, but really what the principals see it as is these standards need to be covered by a lecture in the classroom. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job. And so really the standards are, and I guess I could pull them up, but the standards are supposed to have a way for students to learn how to do science, especially in science. They're supposed to learn how to do the science of investigating, of questioning, of inquiry, something that's different than lecture. or listening. Here, let me pull up. So this is, let me just share my screen here. So these are the standards for my class. And I guess I can interpret these because I know what they're supposed to mean. So this was for my Foundations of Science Literacy. This was basically teaching the students about why we do science a specific way. And then the last set of standards is basically teaching to the ACT science test, which is basically another way of standardized testing, which is just lecturing. But I guess if we looked at this, this last part, this is something that is supposed to be emphasized by doing labs, by doing designs and models. So they're supposed to be able to not only make something or a lab experiment, but they're also able to make conclusions and based on what they observe, validating or negating their hypothesis. And basically they're supposed to do that through scientific investigations, produce data and answer questions. And so these are the different things that they're supposed to do throughout all of these different things. So all of the activities that you're able to do, you can pick and choose about what you're doing here. So in my class, basically, these things are supposed to be done, but what's not appreciated is when you actually are able to go into the laboratory, because in the laboratory, students might not have what's generally thought of maybe as perfect behavior, and they might act out a little bit. They might not be fully observed. They might, it may present a challenge to new teachers to be able to look at them the whole time. And this is a particular situation where we were doing something where they were going to have to make their own project, and we were using the laboratory for them to be able to finish their project, to finish their laboratory, or their project, which was helping them think about this standard. Where was it? So yeah, and use an engineering design process to identify a problem within the local community, propose and develop a possible solution. So basically, they need to be able to present their idea and make a construction. I mean, simple project, but we had to use the laboratory room, and it's different from my classroom, and so there's a door between the two. Well, anyways, we were in the laboratory, and 2 students were done, and without asking me, they decided to go back into the classroom. And they would have been told no, and I disciplined them after the fact that I found out. But during that class period, I had my administrator come in and evaluate me, and she gave me a bad evaluation because she was like, well, you didn't even know that the 2 students were in the classroom. What if they did something bad? What if one of the other students hurt the other student? And I had no idea. There's no room for grace in this from the administrator's perspective. This is a dangerous situation, and you have to treat them like they're potential criminals and all this stuff. It's like, listen, as a public school teacher, you cannot treat every student as a criminal. If the student acts up and you find out about it, they need to be disciplined. But because there's not an adequate amount of discipline, and this goes to my 4th point about undermining the authority of teachers in the classroom. I think the philosophy is that the teacher should have authority in the classroom to discipline the students, to demand the respect of the students, to be that the fearful one, the person who they fear, because they're going to contact their parents. They're going to, inside the classroom, they're going to administer some sort of discipline for that student. Maybe, I mean, maybe the parents at home might whip them or whatever, but the teacher has the ability to have that discipline. And anyway, so there's no way for me to be able to say, okay, well, I discipline those students, or they didn't understand the rules or whatever. Maybe it wasn't clear. That's a learning opportunity. But as a new teacher, I was being evaluated on that, and it was a mistake. How do you grow without making mistakes? And because of the philosophy of the school district that these students are criminals, that is inadequate to address the needs of the other students in the classroom, because not all the students are criminals. You can't treat everyone like criminals. Like I said in a previous video, you can't have enough police to make sure that people do the right thing. If people don't respect the authorities, if they don't respect the idea of a law, that it's good, it's there for their own good and for other people's good, you'll never have enough police. You can't enforce that. And it's something they're doing in China. They're trying to use AI and face identification to have society points. If you have a certain amount of society points, you can get on the subway. If you don't, you can't use it. You have to walk. And so it's very oppressive to people. And I mean, the government, the philosophy behind that is that the government is there to help people. But now at that point, because of the leadership is corrupt, because all men are corrupt, there's no checks and balances. And the difference between that society in America is that there are checks and balances, but people want to remove those and give the government the full authority, all the power here in America. And that's a whole different conversation. Philosophy 2, inspiration for the classroom comes from field trips. And there was an apathy with that. It was so impossible to try and figure out how to do a field trip. And let's see here. So, I mean, it was impossible to learn how to do a field trip as a new teacher adequately. I mean, to have someone say, oh yeah, you need to go do this and this, like when you go to them, like it's not enough. Like you need to have someone who's there to walk you through the steps of getting something done. And that wasn't supported, and it wasn't provided. And it was just a waste of my time. And I was trying to do this on top of everything else that I was doing in February. I was trying to make sure that I got a field trip, because it was something I was learning in my master's degree. The students loved it. They loved the idea of a field trip, and it gave them excitement. They were going to have a learning opportunity. They were going to have community service. It was going to integrate environmental science into the classroom. And well, it was for the environmental science class. They were going to be able to do something for the environment. And so that was a huge waste of my time. And unfortunately, because of coronavirus, it all got canceled anyways. And what's even more frustrating is that when I got the approval from the superintendent, the co-superintendent, who's is responsible for the transport, she then emailed on top of that she actually had to go back on her approval, because the lead teacher, said that she had no idea about the field trip at all. She didn't even know what I was doing. And that was a complete lie. It's like, how am I ever supposed to get anything done? Is this just because I'm a new teacher? I don't get to do anything like for the classroom that actually matters? Am I just supposed to just make my kids brain dead for an hour and 30 minutes every day and hope that they don't get restless and start messing around, and I have to write them up? Then it gives me more work to do because then they're in detention and whatever, or they don't even get detention. They just come back to class, and that's the reality that you have to live in as a teacher, because they undermine your authority. Like the fourth point, the administration can undermine your authority in the classroom, and they just say, well, we're just going to let you go back into class. The teacher to student respect, through giving them responsibility. This was a big problem with the idea of the fact that I don't have to monitor older children with my eyes at all time. They have the responsibility to get their work done. And if they are goofing off, or if they're distracted by their cell phones, they're just going to lose out on their grade. And eventually it's going to reflect. I mean, I was simply following the same procedures as other teachers, and the other teachers, they were like, to be honest, we can't take control of their cell phones. It's the parents call them during the middle of school, and they want the children to answer the phone during class. Anyways, it's just impossible to be able to mitigate that. But I got chewed out because I wasn't facing the entire class period. What? Are you serious? Like, oh, you had your back turned for 30 seconds, Mr. Dingledine. How dare you? They could have killed someone. They could have been on their phone. Who knows what they could have done? Okay. Are you serious? Like, they have the responsibility. These are 12th graders. I'm answering the question of one, and I'm trying to focus on that. If I can't do that, why in the world am I teaching? I don't know. And then the last thing, I think I already touched on this. Teachers' authority in the classroom, or autonomy, for both the responsibility of teaching and for discipline. Teachers need to be able to make the final decisions on, okay, that's wrong and that shouldn't be done, or this is the way that we're doing this in this classroom. And anyway, so that undermining the authority, the teacher has the responsibility to teach the content, but they don't have the authority to discipline the students for what they deem wrong. I had students erupt, become angry at me for things that I didn't even do, other things, and they should have gone to see like the counselor or a counselor, community counselor. They should have gone to quad, to whatever. They needed therapy, and I can't do that as the teacher. You can't send them back into my classroom simply because it's inclusive, and that's the idea. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and they extend it so far into this realm of they say emotionally disturbed. And how are you supposed to, like, what in the world? Like, how do you engage with that? Well, the reason why these children are emotionally disturbed is, and this is part of the reason why I want to teach, but they don't have family. They don't have the ability to trust the people that they're around. They're qualified as adversely affected youth. And I've seen teachers deal with these kids. I was working at the time. I was substitute teaching for the interventionist at the middle school, and I saw a teacher take care of those kids. I never was able to do it. I mean, it takes a certain amount of, it's so frustrating, because either you're a 5-star, and I do not care what people say about this. Either you're a 5-star recruit and you're able to immediately take care of those kids. You're able to get control of them. The kids that are just like out of their mind, like some of them want to do the right thing, but their family environment, all this stuff is just, they're anxious. They literally they have emotional problems simply because someone is sitting in the same room as them. And I care about those kids. I don't have the skill set to deal with that. And if new teachers have to deal with that, you're never going to have enough teachers. All of them are 30% of them are going to quit. And here's the statistics. And I guess I'll share this with you. So this is a publication, School of Education, and this is probably a master's program they're trying to advertise. And this is a legitimate concern. It's one of the most difficult yet rewarding careers, but there's a lot of attrition. So if we go down here, according to the LPI reports, new teachers leave at greater rates than others leaving before retirement. And not only that, it notes that new teachers leave at rates between 19 and 30% within their first 5 years. That's me. And, I don't know whether or not it's because philosophically they're more prepared, or, I thought I was more prepared because I had a higher calling for why I wanted to do this. But anyways, so then they go on to say, burnout doesn't only impact new teachers. Teacher attrition is around 8% compared to other countries with 3 and 4%. Canada, it's right next to us. It's higher with districts that have newer teachers that don't receive as much support as they need. So here's some of the reasons. Those are voluntary leavers. Here's other reasons. So here's some things. Lack of resources. I'd say lack of resources in teacher prep. Low pay. I'll agree with that. I don't want to complain about the pay. Nasty political environment. Not allowed to fail students. Yes, I agree with that. It's like, you can't give them like you can't just, anyways, I don't have any prepared thoughts about that, but That is true. You don't want to fail the students. And actually, I did see this at the middle school while I was substituting there. The rhetoric that the principal used was that unless you can prove that you've retested the students twice, unless you can prove it, not that you just retested the students, you have to be able to prove that you retested the students at least twice, and you have to have documented evidence for all of their tests, and that you not only tested them the first time, retested them. You have to have a documented evidence of that, but you also have to have documented evidence of, and get this, their grade work, their classwork, documented evidence that they didn't even do their classwork. It's absurd. I understand the fact that teaching is more than just teaching to the test, but why would we emphasize teaching to the test if teaching to the test doesn't matter? I don't understand. If problem solving really does matter, then why aren't we doing that? And then the kids can pass or fail on the problem solving thing. Did you ever think of that? This one's really the biggest one for me. I honestly, poor preparation. There's not enough time to prepare. It's insane. And in order to meet the demands for all of it, you just have to have impeccable ways of getting things done, or you have to have everything already prepared and not change subjects. A lot of the teachers who are there now, they've been through and they've coped long enough where they get the same subject and now they're cruising. I don't want to go through and I'm coping. Like, I don't want to cope. I want to succeed. I want to be able to do a good job. I don't want to just, I don't want to make the next like wheel or be an entrepreneur that makes millions or whatever. Like, but I want to be able to say that I did a good job. I don't want to sit there and say, it was all right. And then these two things, just there's so much hypocrisy, teaching to the test, and testing. Just testing wastes an entire, and it's not actually, testing wastes an entire month. And there's no way that you can say, oh, well, you're not actually wasting the time. They literally use half of April and the rest of May in order to test these kids. It's absurd. So pedagogical preparation, that would probably be the only thing. But I just, without any more help in the classroom, it's just impossible to get done. Here's some more statistics. 66% of teachers want to leave their jobs. 41.3%, this is a higher number, leave within the first 5 years of teaching. I didn't suffer from this, but higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse, and 36.4 are always likely to quit. So anyways, there's lots of stuff to talk about here. But yeah, ultimately, I think for me, dissatisfaction with the reality of people not appreciating problem solving, the things that actually matter in the classroom, not appreciating the amount of time that I need to plan, and ultimately not being able to get the job done. So those are the things that made me want to quit teaching, and I really, it's such an emotional thing. It's taken me, I turned in my letter of resignation in April. I think it was April like 2nd or something, April 3rd. And that was the 4th month of the year. It's taken me about 4 months because it's August 4th now. 4 months to really deal with this and to get my thoughts together about really all the issues, wrap my head around it. So if you watch this video, thanks for listening. Leave a comment about maybe if you know someone who's a teacher, share your thoughts about what they struggle with. If you're an administrator, leave your comment of sympathy and whatever. If you can cry with me, then that's fine. Like this video, share the video if you'd like, and hopefully this gives you some insight and some compassion for teachers who you know, and especially for new teachers. And so anyways, my name is Parker Dingledine, and check out some of my other videos. The other videos that I already did, why I want to teach and what I enjoyed about teaching, are on my channel. So I hope you have a great day.